everybody. Welcome to Be Empowered, the podcast, where we dive into the realities of healthcare and entrepreneurship. We offer our opinion unfiltered and unapologetic, and always with a dose of empowerment. We're here to amplify voices, yours and ours, challenge the status quo, and explore what it truly means to thrive. I'm Dr. Santoshi Bilakota,
I'm Dr. Shauna Moffa.
and let's get into it. So today's topic is, I think, kind of a fun one, but also one that I think is going to be interesting for the audience. So today we're going to be talking about non-clinical careers for physicians. And so before we start, Shala, do you do any non-clinical work that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, so I do some leadership work and also I do some utilization review work as well as some consulting work. So it's been really great to be able to diversify out of clinical medicine, kind of supplement my income and also just explore other things and use my skills, other ventures.
I agree. I similarly, like you, I do some utilization reviews, I do disability reviews, I do IME exams, I do some expert witness work, and I also do consulting as well. And I think it's good to be outside of the hospital and outside of the clinic, kind of, use your speaking skills or use your brain in a different way. I think it's been really rewarding. It's a nice variety. And I also do want to add that a lot of these non-clinical gigs actually do pay pretty well.
Right.
I'll say, I think we in medicine, we are shy about setting a rate per se, but in the outside world, I mean, they are business people. So that's also why I like this, because it gives me an idea of what I should be valuing myself as.
Exactly. And we forgot to mention this podcast as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're not we're not making money yet off this podcast. I mean, hopefully one day, but it's a good hobby.
Yeah.
I love doing it. I feel like we get a chance to talk about real issues, and hopefully we'll help some people. I think that's also a very important thing. It's not always all about money.
Right. Yeah, we are making an impact, I hope.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about why physicians are exploring non-clinical paths. According to a survey conducted by the American Medical Association between 2021 and 2022, 40% of physicians indicated that they had a moderate interest in leaving, or were likely to leave, or would definitely leave within the next 2 years. Honestly, I think that's a little underreported personally. And I know this isn't just physicians, also. This survey was of physicians, but I've heard the same thing coming from other healthcare workers, such as nurses and CNAs. But that's a very large percentage of people that are looking to leave a career that they invested so much time into. People that decide to pursue medicine as a career are not people who call it quits, right? They're not people that are, let's say they're people that are resilient, even though they keep telling us we need resiliency training. I think people who embark on this career are very strong. They're very organized. They have a good head on their shoulders. They're very motivated. So for them to lose all hope and say I'm done with this, I think that's kind of a big deal.
You brought up a good point. I think I also had that mindset, okay, that I need to power through and I need to do this. Like I'm not a quitter. But then when I changed my mindset into saying that I'm not quitting, I'm starting new, then then the whole thing changed. Then I was very happy actually, and I was able to enjoy my life. I was able to even enjoy clinical work because we are high achieving professionals and we want to help people, but it was at the expense of our burnout. So it's a lot of sacrifices, that we make. And then when I started kind of telling myself that this is not quitting, and this is just starting something new that's more impactful, then I was able to let go of that guilt and let go of, what really kind of was not a good, not a positive thinking. Then I was able to actually be very successful and be much more happier. My family is much more happier. I feel the difference. I feel like now I can do clinical work for a long time. But before that, I didn't want to. I wanted to quit. I don't want to use the word quit again, but I wanted to stop every single day.
I think the word quit is actually the accurate word, because not that because that's what we're doing, but that's what they want us to think we're doing, right? That's what the
Right.
administrators, the CEOs, I mean, even some of the people out in society who don't understand what we're going through, the mental aspect of this job is so great that if you do want to leave it, there's a whole bunch of people that are looking down on you and saying you're a quitter, and that's just what we've been trained to believe as well. So when you leave a setting like this, you almost have to deprogram your thinking, like you just left the cult. And you realize that I'm not a quitter. Like what about this is making me a quitter? I'm just changing things so it better suits my lifestyle. And I think, burnout, moral injury, and lack of autonomy, we've discussed those things in other episodes. Those are all factors that lead to physicians exploring non clinical paths. Lifestyle, family balance, especially if you're a woman in medicine. A lot of female physicians are exploring non clinical paths. A lot of them are going part time clinical, and I think that helps them enjoy the job and also their families. I gave a friend an analogy. It's like cake, right? You like eating cake, but if you're forced to eat cake every single day for 12 hours a day, you're not going to want to eat cake. So if you're doing other work and you're also seeing patients and you're enjoying it, you're going to have longevity in your career, and you're going to not be depressed, because that's another thing. We've discussed this. We see physicians posting all the time about how depressed they are because they're working 60 hours a week, and maybe they need antidepressants, maybe they need Adderall. And again, if that's what you need, I'm not saying this as a judgment, but I'm saying maybe consider the root cause and the situation around that.
Right. A band-aid will not help. You need to consider the root cause of the problem, which is basically cutting back on work, relaxing, spending more time with family, lifestyle changes. And there was another thing. There was a misalignment between values, because I found myself that I don't want to see 20 patients a day and not spend time talking to them at all, not spend time talking to anybody in between. I don't want it to be robotic work for me. I want to be a human physician who is compassionate, who is able to develop a relationship with a patient, talk to the patient. That's why I realized that it's not possible just seeing patients after patient, patient after patient, patient after patient, and not do anything else. And then at night, think about the patient, think about the overwhelming work, among other things.
Yeah, it's a lose-lose situation, because I think, the patient deserves a doctor who's not burnt out and grumpy, and you come home and your spouse deserves someone who's not grumpy and burnt out either. So I think the best way to achieve that balance is by, seeing if there's other non-clinical things. I mean, not even that, but if you can cut back on your clinical work a little bit, I think that would help the situation. But I think it can make it even better if you try to supplement it with non-clinical work that might be totally different than what you do on a day-to-day basis, but it still allows you to use some of the transferable skills that you already have as a physician. And I think that's a big part of this. When I started looking at other options, my first thing was like, I can't do anything else. Like, this is what I've trained to do for like 10, 12 years. What do you mean do something else, But what we don't realize is, as physicians, we naturally have a lot of transferable skills. We're good at communicating. A lot of us are good at taking complex things and making them simple. We're good with speaking. We've done grand rounds, we've done presentations, so we're strong speakers. We can give a good presentation. A lot of us tend to be organized. We're good with numbers. And I think if you recognize some of those skills that you have, you can look into some of these other non-clinical options that use the same skills.
And I would add, we're good at writing, we're good
Hmm.
at critically thinking. Although I feel like, working in these clinical jobs is taking that away from us. The critical thinking ability is taken away from us. And then the writing, like, now we're using all these templates, to just be faster. So I would argue actually staying in clinical medicine is taking away a lot of the skills that we inherently have to be able to become a physician. So I think we have to think about that too. If you don't use your the skills that you inherently have, you might lose it, especially by staying in clinical medicine 100% of the time.
Nothing will kill your creativity more than a career in medicine. I can guarantee you that much. I used to love to write poetry. I used to like submit my stuff in, and I used to actually win things. Like this was way back in the day. Um, when I started medicine, until I quit my academic job, I couldn't even tell you the last time I read a book for pleasure. Now I have time. I sit with my Kindle for like a few hours sometimes and I read a book, or I listen to even an audiobook. It's not all like educational stuff, because back when I was in clinical practice, every time I was reading something, it was literature on stuff. It's like that part of my brain that was creative kind of died. And now that I'm doing more non-clinical stuff, I feel like I can revive it again. I can give it the exercise that it needs to get back to where it was. And I'm finding a lot more pleasure in life just by doing that. And I know, Shala, you're an artist as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I used to paint. I started painting when I was basically in high school. And then again, in medical school, I stopped. I mean, I painted many paintings before that. In medical school, I stopped in the residency. And when I was doing a lot of kind of clinical medicine every day, I wasn't able to paint anymore. And then when I started diversifying into other things, I found the time to paint again. So I started painting again. I started playing soccer. I started listening to audiobooks. I listened to I finished one audiobook in a week. So it's a lot of pluses that got added to my life after I started diversifying and not doing the same clinical work every single day, 5 days a week, or actually more than that. Sometimes we have to work on weekends too.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what roles doctors are going into that are healthcare adjacent. So pharma is a big one. A lot of doctors look into consulting with pharmaceutical companies. I will say it's a little harder to get into it, but there are advisory companies that you can be on the board of. And they will consult you for like new medications that are coming out, things in the pipeline, market research, things of that nature. That's good, and it also pays pretty well. You often with some of these companies can set your own rate, and I'm happy to include that information in the caption about which companies specifically. But a lot of them will, do like an hour phone call with the consulting company, or not the consulting company, the market research company. It's very anonymous. You give your opinion, your prescribing practices. You can teach them about a medication, give like a little presentation, and that's it. I also know people that have switched completely to pharma, and I think that becomes a little harder to do if you don't have prior connections or experience, but certainly it is something you can do. More commonly, aside from pharma, is working for insurance companies. And I know that sounds very icky because insurance companies I am not a fan of. However, I found that in doing disability reviews and utilization management for insurance companies, oftentimes I can advocate for the patient and I can approve things that they otherwise would not be approving. And I'll tell you, being on that end, there's a lot of pushback often. A lot of this stuff is not handled fairly. But I think the more physicians we have on that side advocating for fair treatment of patients, we actually can make positive impact.
Right, I agree. Yeah, and I think there are some physicians who have their moral compass intact and they work for insurance companies and they really want to help people. And I'm hopeful that if more physicians work for insurance companies, we can make changes to better serve the patients and physicians as well, to kind of remove some of that burden of prior authorizations and peer-to-peer calls from our physicians.
Right. And then there's informatics, which is a little different than consulting work. It's for physicians who have any kind of tech knowledge. And even if you don't have information on tech itself, as long as you have clinical information and you can help optimize the EHRs, electronic health records, data analytics, those kinds of things. Some of these companies, including big companies like Epic, are always looking for physicians to hire so they can, get to know more about the clinical aspect of it. Because you have to understand EHRs, the people who usually run EHRs are not practicing physicians. They're folks who are very good at tech. So you come in with that specific set of expertise on the clinical aspect of it. And some informatics places actually do look into hiring physicians. Again, it's not the easiest jobs to find, but they are out there. Just one more I want to add to the consulting bucket is there are bigger companies like McKinsey and specific health specific boutique firms. But I will say, as someone who's looked, those consulting companies are a little harder to get into. If you have prior experience, if you have an MBA, for instance, I think it becomes a lot easier. But for the general academic physician or non-academic physician who's clinically practicing who wants to pivot a little bit, I think the easiest things to get into are the utilization reviews, the disability reviews, IME work. All of those things I think are pretty good in terms of work-life balance and also giving you good pay.
Right. And I think part of the difficulty getting into these jobs is because we don't have time to network when we are working 5 days a week or more, 9 hours a day. You can't go to conferences. The only conferences that you go to are medical conferences, and you just meet the same people that are doing the same jobs as you. So my recommendation would be to network, make sure you are on LinkedIn, and you go to even non-medical conferences like the tech conferences, the healthcare tech conferences, and there are so many conferences out there for entrepreneurs that they would love to hear a physician's opinion, a physician's input in what they're doing, because there is a lot of money in healthcare. Unfortunately, it's not going to the pockets of the physicians, but there's a lot of money in healthcare, and I found that recently myself when I was getting more involved in entrepreneurship. So we have to get to these conferences and network and see what's going on. Same with pharma. So there's a lot of
Exactly.
money there. There's a lot of money there. So I think it's doable. It's not easy, but you just have to get your face out there.
And all the people I know who have landed good pharmaceutical jobs that are now full time pharmaceutical jobs or full time pharmaceutical employees are physicians that are now medical directors, assistant medical directors at some really large pharma companies, have done it through networking. Exactly. Like you said, you have to know someone. And you don't always have to start at a medical director. You can start as a medical science liaison and then work your way up. I know doctors who work specifically in the clinical research aspect, drug safety, regulatory affairs. There's a lot of options in both pharma and tech, especially with AI. I think with AI coming into place, there's going to be more growth for the need for physician input because AI can only do what you train it to do. And without that physician aspect of it, it's going to be difficult. And so I think there is a lot of need for, physician input in a lot of these situations because, like you said, everyone is making money off of us except us. So, we have to get out of that. I mean, go to the academic conferences, that's fine. But we also have to get into some of these tech conferences, these entrepreneurship conferences, and show our face.
Right. Exactly. So the other areas that this one is ideal for those passionate about teaching, about storytelling, or kind of making complex information available to the patients or to the public is through education and content creation. So, for example, medical writing, writing journals or medical websites, CME platforms, also pharmaceutical education materials. So there's a lot of need for that to educate the public. And then you can do speaking. So you deliver talks and workshops. You can do keynote speeches on clinical topics, leaderships, or physician wellness. There's also podcasting, which we're doing here. So you share your insights, you interview with experts, you explore health topics and solutions for them, or with peers.
Yep. And with medical writing, there is a association. I think it's the American Medical Writing Association that I'm actually a part of myself. And they look for medical writers doing all kinds of medical, not just medical writing for like CME or medical websites, but also for medical articles, content for journals. Um, like your run of the mill magazines also sometimes need medical writers. So though if you are into writing and you enjoy it, it's a good way to utilize that part of your brain. Um, Podcasting, Shala mentioned that's what we're doing, but I want to make that broader and add social media into it. It's what I do on my TikTok channel and my Instagram channel. I started it because I felt I had a lot more information to share with my patients than I had time for in a regular visit. So I actually started my social media pages to help my patients find proper epilepsy information, like correct epilepsy information. And I didn't have time to do this in clinic. And over time, it's become a great source of joy for me personally. My patients have found it helpful. Now, a lot more people use it. And I feel like I'm making a positive impact without having to sit in clinic 12 hours a day. So that is very valuable to me.
That's a great idea. I mean, that is very good to know. And I hope that the audience takes that idea and puts it in action also. So if there's anything you're passionate about and you want to educate the public, you can go ahead and basically share it on your social media. And that's amazing. Yeah, and I know I follow your seizure social media. It's really great topic, and I know that a lot of people don't have a lot of knowledge about seizures. You did a great job.
Thank you. And then as our podcast grows, we'll try to continue to interview more physician entrepreneurs to get an idea of what exactly they're doing. I mean, there's a variety of things. I'm not the only one who's on social media. There's a lot of doctors who are doing educational content on social media. There's a lot of doctors who are teaching tips for entrepreneurship, coaching, things like that. They are also a lot of doctors who are very involved with healthcare startups, and AI systems. So there's a variety of things you can do, but I think the first step is trying to identify what you're lacking in your current situation, and what you can do to fix that. And if that for you means going part time, doing less of it, then that's fine. If for you that means I don't want to see patients in clinic anymore, it's burning me out, I want to focus on inpatient work, then that's it. Um, or if it's I just don't want to do this anymore, I think that's totally fine as well. I don't think that makes you a quitter.
Oh yeah, I mean you mentioned startups. So I live in the vicinity of Silicon Valley, and I've been invited to a lot of entrepreneurship conferences and events, and you'll be amazed on what you see there. They would love to talk to physicians. I mean, just the ideas, just to ask a physician, what is the problem you're dealing with? And so to come up with solution how to fix it, with a startup how to fix it. Really, if you get out there and you say you're a physician and you have this problem, for example, that you're dealing with day to day, there are developers that would work with you on your idea to develop what you need, and then you can scale it and sell it. You can sell it to private practices. For example, if it's an AI solution that helps the practices or DPCs or whoever, then you can sell it to practices. So there are a lot of opportunities out there for physicians, and they do have the skill and the knowledge. So don't be afraid to get out there.
Exactly. And just to touch on what you said, yeah, it doesn't have to be, you sell your soul to private equity, but what you can do is utilize some of the help that they provide to do something that might benefit you also in the long run, like lifestyle medicine. We're seeing a lot of lifestyle medicine now with obesity. For men, there's these companies that are prescribing like finasteride and all of those medications. But obesity medicine, I keep coming back to it because that's a huge one right now. And I think a lot of doctors are working with venture capitalists to try to launch companies. And I think they're actually becoming very successful. And again, we're not saying this to suggest that you guys go sell snake oil. I mean, of course, we want to keep things ethically, but what I think we're trying to say is if you have an idea and you want to make it happen, I don't think working with a venture capital firm or a tech company or a startup company is a bad idea. I think, like Shala said, you have to get your face out there. You have to go on LinkedIn and reach out to people. You have to make those connections. You're never going to be able to do that if you're just sitting in clinic and typing away at your notes, 10, 12 hours a day. That's just not going to happen.
Exactly. And then the other adventures is basically your private practice. I think we were told that we're not good in business and we're not good in finances, but that's not true. We can learn everything very fast. We are critical thinkers, and we have amazing learning abilities because, I mean, we learned significant amount of knowledge in short amount of time in medical school, right? So you can open your private practice and be successful. Like concierge medicine is one, your telehealth only practice, and addressing specific niche focus model, for example, migraine or lifestyle medicine, as Santoshi said, or like intraoperative monitoring services, like what I do, um, professional services, or like EEG services. So don't be afraid. Yes, you do need help, but in this era of ChatGPT and everything, and lots of informations are available. You just need the will and the power, the mindset to do it.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to Chat GPT and other AI, we've been told that they're going to take over our jobs. I don't think that's going to happen. I actually think it's an asset. We should use Chat GPT and AI to our benefit. I don't think anyone's going to replace the critical thinking and the diagnostic reasoning of a physician. But I do think AI can make our jobs a little easier and help us explore our options. I ask Chat GPT questions all day.
Right.
Why not?
Yeah. I mean, for the foreseeable future, I don't think we're going to be replaced. I do think that AI is going to expand exponentially. That they will be more intelligent than humans, but I don't think we have to worry about it in the foreseeable future. And by that time, we
We
might
might
as
not
well
be
use
here
it
anymore.
now. We might not be here for our kids, maybe, but we might as well use it because if we don't, then other people will use it and just move on. So we have to adapt, basically.
Yeah, no, definitely. We have to adapt. And so many physicians, like we said, I think underestimate how transferable their clinical skills are. In summary, I think all the non clinical roles we've discussed here today all require the things that you already have as a physician: critical thinking, diagnostic reasoning, communication skills, data interpretation, your ability to be a leader, because believe it or not, you are a leader if you're a physician, your ability to collaborate. You have to be good at teamwork as a physician, no matter where you work. And adaptability, like Shala said, you have to be adaptable, working in high pressure, rapidly changing environments. I mean, that's residency and
Right.
that's day-to-day clinical practice. If you can get through that, I think that's a very valuable asset to bring to any new project.
No, yeah, definitely. And there are other areas too, like media, for example, or policy making. So you can help nonprofit organization or other governmental bodies to change policies. You can do advocacy, in health equity or gender bias or physician well-being. Some of these may not pay well, but it's if it aligns with your values, then why not? It again, the point is that it's not just the money, it's the amount of fulfillment that a job or whatever you do is going to add to your life.
Yes, and a 2022 Medscape report found that 47 of physicians say that they would take a pay cut for a better work-life balance. I agree with that. You probably fall into that 47% too, Shala.
Right.
But I think that's a very important point because at the end of the day, money is nice and it's very, very important. But if you are doing other projects that don't pay as well, but you're passionate about and you feel like you're getting to use, your talents, and also if you're being valued in that space, I think that's priceless personally. I think the common myths, like we touched on at the beginning of the episode, you feel like you're a quitter, you're wasting your degree, you're giving up on patients, you can't pivot, you don't have an MBA, you don't have all of these additional degrees. I've noticed you don't need any of that. You just come as you are as a physician with your clinical experience, your knowledge, and a lot of people will pay to hear your opinions and get your insight.
Exactly. And then you have to consider it's not, you don't have calls, you don't have to worry about malpractice, liabilities. There's no charting after hours. You'll be able to spend more time with family, with friends. You don't miss holidays anymore. So there is a lot that gets added to your life. And also the mental health. I think the mental health is a big part of it. That it's just working clinically, I think, is bringing a huge burden on people's mental health. So I think that's something that we have to really consider when you pivot. It's not just the pay cut. You add a lot more value than just the money.
Exactly. And I think as we're getting close to closing out this episode, a few things I want to emphasize, or a few things we want to emphasize. You have to shift your mindset. It's okay to pivot. You're not a quitter, you're not giving up on, your dreams, that you're not for some people who feel like they are letting their family down if they change what they're doing. I wouldn't worry about that. Like, you have to change your mindset. It's okay to pivot, and actually pivoting might help you stay in this job a lot longer than not pivoting. So you have to look out for your own best interests.
Right.
Start
Okay.
exploring while you're still working. That's important. While you have a steady paycheck, I would recommend, and doesn't mean you have to give up that steady paycheck, but I would start looking for stuff while you already have something concrete going on, just so you don't feel that pressure. Things like LinkedIn, networking, attending conferences, like Shala mentioned, both medical and non-medical, to network. And that'll really help you leverage the network that you do have, build a new network, and also find good mentors.
Right. And I mean, it's difficult to explore when you're working a lot. So my recommendation is that if you're not happy in your job, cut back on the time. Cut back on the time, do it like 4 days a week, or instead of 20 days a month or more, do it, 16 days a month. Allow that one day to relax and understand and write down what you want, what you see yourself doing in 5 years, 10 years, um, and and then take it from there. So basically, you have to put that time in. You have to put that effort in, because you can't really expect yourself or a job or a non-clinical job or an opportunity to just be presented to you when you're not even looking for it. So you have to be able to look for it, and you have to be able to put the time to look for it. Um, my recommendation would be, don't quit, or again, I don't want to use that word, but basically don't just stop the steady paycheck and the job that you're doing. Although I know many physicians get to a point of, breakdown, and they just cannot even do it. They immediately resign because it gets to a point of like you cannot even continue one more day, in this. So I don't recommend it to get to that point, right? So cut back before it gets to that point, and explore other options.
Yes, and build a good resume that speaks on your strengths. I think as doctors, we minimize our talents. There's no reason for us to minimize our talents on our resumes or even in our LinkedIn profile. Sometimes I'll see the LinkedIn profiles of some of these people that are in like tech or even HR, and they have like all this stuff. And then you go to a doctor's LinkedIn profile and it's like where you
Nothing.
graduated medical school. That's it. Like, what do you mean? Like no samples of what you've done. Um, People go all out on their LinkedIn profiles. And honestly, I think that's how we should be. Why
Right.
not?
I mean, I know a lot of physicians, they don't even have LinkedIn profiles. It's just, it blows my mind. Because I don't know, there is something about us that we haven't learned to really put our faces out there. I think there is an element of shyness, but I think it comes from the way we were treated during residency, right?
I think so. I think you've unfortunately been told for a period of time that you don't have value. I mean, you're not directly told that, but a lot of the actions
Just be
suggest that.
humble,
Be
right?
humble.
Be humble and minimize yourself instead of maximizing yourself, right?
Exactly. And like we talked about in our prior episodes, we're not even allowed to talk about our salaries. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
How you just have to be humble and accept what you're given and be thankful for the
Well,
opportunity.
Dr. Bilakona and I are not like that, so we are very pay transparent.
Exactly. And I think, we've touched on the big things in this episode. I can put some links in the bio for organizations that I've found helpful. Seek is one. It has helped me with IME work and other expert witness stuff. Some Docs is another one. That's for doctors on social media and, doctors with concierge practices, telehealth practices, things like that. So I'll put a few in the captions just to get started or get people started. But ultimately, you're going to have to do a lot of the work too. And I think you have to put yourself out there. Don't be shy. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do other things. So you're not stuck. There's more than one way to be a doctor, and there's more than one way to help people.
Right. And there is the health conference also, the HLTH.
Hmm.
That's one of the largest and most dynamic conferences. And there is global health conferences that you can go to. And there are lots of summits and conferences around the San Francisco area as well, that
Yeah.
focus on entrepreneurship.
Lots of advocacy conferences as well. I think that can also be helpful for people. So yeah, you just look up what's going on and put yourself out there, and you'd be surprised how many like-minded people you'll meet. You open up a whole bunch of doors for you. It was
Exactly.
like that for me anyway.
No, definitely for me as well. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to Be Empowered, the podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and rate this podcast. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Stay strong, stay empowered, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.